I want to think with you guys this morning about what drives your life and about what drives our church. To drive something means to guide it and direct it, okay, to aim it where you want it to go. So when you drive a car, where does it go? Hopefully it goes down the street, where you want it. When you drive a nail, where does it go? Hopefully it goes into the wood where you want it. When you drive a golf ball, where does it go? Wherever it wants to go. God only knows where it might go. In the water, in the sand, off somebody's head. Okay. What drives your life? It's worth thinking about. Could be money, could be ambition, could be fear, security, ego, approval, or it could be something else. What drives a church? Could be tradition, could be making budgets, could be spiritual consumerism, or it could be something else. And this morning I want to talk with you for a while about the something else. There's this pivotal moment in the ministry of Jesus. And this is from Matthew chapter 9. It says, Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." Now, Jesus' life was driven by love, and that meant that he was a man on a mission. And he would travel all over the place, and he would see people, and he would see all kinds of misery. Lepers would come to him that nobody else would touch. And he would reach out and he would touch them. A paralyzed guy was brought to him so desperate that his friends lowered him through a hole in a roof so he could be let down to Jesus. A blind guy had been reduced, as blind folks often were and sometimes are, to just begging on the side of the road. Especially people who didn't have enough money for doctors or medicine or care would come from all over. Desperate parents brought their sick children, and the anxious and the depressed and the lonely would come wondering, "Do you see me, Jesus? Could you help me, Jesus?" And Matthew tells us this beautiful thing. He says when Jesus saw the crowds, he had compassion on them. Not judgment, not superiority, not disdain. When he saw people, he just saw people. There's a poor woman who's been forced into prostitution, and Jesus sees her. There's an orphan. There's a Pharisee who gets all confused. He wants to love God. He wants to serve God, but he's all confused about it. There's a Roman soldier everybody hates. There's a widow over there that nobody notices. She has no money. She's so vulnerable. There's a rich young ruler, and everybody envies him. But nobody actually knows what's going on in his heart. And Jesus sees all these people, and he has compassion because of their condition. They were harassed, with all the same pressures that you and I are harassed by. They were helpless to be able to solve their own problems. They were like sheep without a shepherd, and he healed them. And he preached the good news of the kingdom, the gospel, the staggering truth that through Jesus, life with God is now possible for ordinary people, for broken people who never thought they would qualify. Jesus would say, by God's grace, your sins can be forgiven. Your guilt can be removed. Your heart can be healed and made whole. You can be set free from anger and from fear and from hate and from insecurity and addictions. You can be set free from sin. And this is true for you. You can have a fresh start every morning. You can have a heavenly Father who watches over you in care every night. You can have a family with other Christ followers to belong to. You can have God's Spirit to guide you. You can have a purpose to inspire you. You can have an eternity to look forward to. You can have hope. And Jesus would talk about this, walking all over the place. And Matthew says he was going into all the towns and all the villages. And he's describing for us the range of Jesus' ministry. And he specifically mentions villages. A village in that culture was so small that it didn't even count as a town. And the idea was there was no place that was too small for Jesus to go. And the more and more people kept coming as he would go and as he would talk and as he would love and as he would serve. And this really happened. And the scale of human need was just overwhelming to Jesus. It broke his heart. And finally, one day he turned to his disciples. And it's like he said, guys, I can't stand for this to go on another day. Like, I can't stand it. I can't stand for people to be trapped in their life without God. Their aloneness and their brokenness and their confusion and their fear and their isolation and their pain are absolutely breaking my heart. And he's looking at his guys and he's like, do you see it? Do you get it? And so he says, guys, we can't be satisfied with just our own little community. How good things are here among us, our friendships. We cannot just be satisfied with that anymore. I need you to know, guys, that we're not here for us. We're here for them. That's why we're here. And it's like Jesus was saying, okay, right now, we're in the middle of this huge flock of sheep with no shepherd. People are alone, and they're afraid, and they're confused, and they're harassed, and they're helpless. But it doesn't have to stay like that. There could be a harvest. We could see a harvest of redeemed humanity that would bring joy to heaven and would bring heaven to earth. We could see a harvest of grace and reconciliation that could deliver people from hatred and violence. We could see a harvest of generosity so that instead of there being impoverished parents who don't have enough to feed their starving children, everybody could have enough. We could see a harvest of righteousness, people's characters being restored and redeemed, people learning to love and to serve and to give themselves away. Guys, I can't stand seeing things the way they are when I know the way things could be. The harvest is enormous. And Jesus was saying, look around. It's immense. Okay, people are ripe. The culture is ripe. Hearts are ready. People want God. But we have a problem. If there are no workers, nothing will happen. And all that could be never will be. So Jesus, in this incredibly tender moment, turns to the disciples and pleads, pray, pray. Pray that the Lord of the harvest, okay, because it's his harvest. God is the one who's at work in people's lives. It says, pray that the Lord of the harvest will send out, and then Jesus chooses a very interesting word. Jesus says, pray that the Lord of the harvest will send out workers. And this is a really important word, workers. It's not consultants. It's not experts. It's not supervisors or analysts. Okay, it's not spectators. It's not consumers. It's not VIPs or CEOs or MBAs. Just this humble word, workers. Okay, now guys, what does a worker do? Apparently, this is not a very blue-collar crowd. Let's try this again. Just take a wild guess. I mean, if you get it wrong, there's grace, but what does a worker do, guys? They work. And so Jesus had a lot to say about this, about the whole work issue. He said, I have to be about the work that my Father sent me to do. He says in John 9, while it is daytime, we must continue doing the work of the one who sent me. And this is so simple. I mean, it's so simple that anybody can do this because there's so many different ways to do this. It's listen. It's notice. It's encourage, care, share, give, serve, come alongside somebody, invite somebody. And Jesus said to his friends, pray. Guys, pray. You got to pray that God will send out workers, spiritual workers, kingdom workers, because my heart is breaking. And the human race is like sheep without a shepherd. You have to pray for workers. And so the 12 disciples, they were like, wow, okay. And so they prayed, God, send out workers. And then in the very next verse, Matthew chapter 10, verse 1, God has Jesus send out workers. And guess who God had Jesus send out? The 12 disciples who prayed, God, send out workers. That's a dangerous prayer to pray. And see, this is crucial. Jesus had a mission. It was his idea. He started it. He went on it. And it was going real well. And he was doing it because his heart was broken at the shape of our world. Jesus had a mission. And then one day, he invited some other people to join him in it. Jesus didn't start a church and then give it a mission. Jesus started this mission and then he gave it a church. And the idea is that everyone who's a part of this movement, every single person is a worker, is to be a laborer in the harvest field. And this is the mission that God has given us. This is why every single church exists. This is our Father's business. But what can happen is we can lose focus. We can decide to make church about something else. We can decide to make our lives about something else. David Platt wrote about a ship that was built 60 years ago. And it was built to be the greatest troop carrier in U.S. naval history. It's called the SS United States. And it was designed to carry 15,000 troops faster and farther without having to stop for fuel or supplies than any other ship in military history. The only thing is, it never actually got used to carry troops. It was such a remarkable ship that it got turned into a luxury liner for celebrities and heads of state. It contained 600 staterooms, 4 dining salons, 3 bars, 2 theaters, and the comfort of being the world's first fully air-conditioned passenger ship for wealthy patrons who wanted to enjoy first-class service. It was designed to be a troop carrier, to have a mission, but it got turned into a luxury liner for consumers. It's a really bad thing when that happens to a church. Because we have a mission. Okay, the church is just a troop carrier. We're not here for ourselves. And I was thinking, what if Jesus was here in our day? Because he is. And what if he were to walk around the towns and villages of the greater Seattle area, and we were to go with him on a walk? See what he sees. Feel what he feels. Do you think Jesus would look at our towns and villages and say to us, "Nice job, guys, mission accomplished"? I don't think so. I think he'd see so much spiritual confusion and isolation. I think he'd see marriages breaking up or just hanging by a thread. I think he'd see people all over living in isolation without anybody to love them. I think he'd see addictions destroying people. He'd see young girls with eating disorders everywhere. All kinds of pain over how society defines beauty. He'd see all kinds of men enslaved by online pornography. I think he'd see anxious college students who are terrified about their future. He'd see hopeless high schoolers who are afraid that after they graduate or don't graduate, there's just nothing in life for them. He'd see a lot of fear. Fear of aging, fear of failure, fear of not enough money. And then he'd see the church. This community of people who know God. People who know the grace of being forgiven and being loved. And then I think Jesus would say, "Okay, but do you see what I see? Do Do you feel what I feel? Do you realize we're not just here for us? And I want to come back to an image that we looked at several years ago, because I want us to think about the reality that there's two different kinds of community, two different kinds of intimacy. And one is like inward focused. People that just love each other, really love each other, but they're always looking inward at each other. And then there's people who love each other, people that enjoy each other, people that serve each other and pray for each other, people that love each other's kids and share history, but a community of people that's learned to do all that while they're at the same time looking outward. Always looking to include new people. Always thinking together about those that are on the outside. And so I have asked several people to come up and help me with a little demonstration, and I'm sure you all completely get this, but I want to pound it into your psyche. And so I'm going to do this. This is going to be amazing. And we actually did this a couple years ago, another time, and it was brilliant then. And I thought I'm so glad I thought of that. It was a genius. And so we're going to do it again. So those of you that I have talked to, would you make your way on up here? Yay! Yay, says Matt. Come all the way up on the stage so the folks can see you. All right, so here we got a group of people who love each other. And I mean, we love each other. And so we're going to show, no, I'm in the group, guys. And we just love each other, and my goodness, this is so fantastic, and we share our lives, and we share stories, and we watch the Seahawks, and we cry together, and we think about the Mariners maybe going to the playoffs, and it's just blowing us away, and so this is what we do. But we can't see anything but each other and ourselves, okay? Okay, another example of community is, and I can't see you because now I'm going to turn this way, we're all holding hands, we're all still loving each other, we all still very much care about each other, but we're facing outward. We're thinking about people outside ourselves. We're thinking about how can we include other people in our group, okay, in what we're doing. Now, to just really drive this home, what I'd like to do is invite Bob Lewis to come up. And Bob is our token outsider. And Bob wants to be a part of this group because everybody wants to be a part of this group because we are awesome. And so here we are being awesome, and Bob wants to be a part of the group, and but we don't see Bob. We don't see anything but anybody else. We're so awesome. We're so awesome. Oh, I just love you guys. This is hey, remember that time when we did that awesome thing? Yeah. Oh. All right. So let's rewind. Let's try this again. Now we're going to be a group of people that still loves each other, but we're looking outward. Hey, what's your name? Hi, Bob. Hey, Bob, come on in. Hey, Bob, come be with us.
Really?
Come hang out with us. Everybody give Bob a big group hug. Let's smother him with our love. Oh! And now, Bob, come join us. Let's hold hands together and look outward and see who else we could invite into our group.
Hey, hon, you gotta come.
Yeah. Bob doesn't, his wife's not here. It's awful. Come on, Jan Lee. Yay! Yay! Jan Lee, come on in here.
They like us.
Yeah. Come on in here. All right. Woohoo! Both of the Lewises in community. I just want to cry. All right, that's it. Thank you, guys. There's two ways of doing community. I want to read you a description of the very beginning of Christianity. Now, this is a familiar passage to many of you, and it's familiar because it is powerfully beautiful. And the scene is that Jesus has just ascended to the Father. Oh, dude. See, that's a brother taking care of a brother. That's what's going to happen if you go to the men's thing. There's this scene that Jesus has just ascended to the Father, and the disciples have just been filled with the Holy Spirit. And Peter has just preached this message to the crowds in Jerusalem, and thousands of people have decided to become disciples, okay, to follow Jesus. So this group has gone from just like 100 to several thousand. And this community is kind of exploding. And at the end of Acts chapter 2, Luke describes what this community looked like, what they were doing together. And it's so incredible. It says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Imagine that. You have need, I can sell something and provide for you. Every day, they continued to meet together in the temple courts. And they broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. It's so beautiful. I mean, the way they cared for each other, the way they intertwined their lives, the way they learned together and they prayed together and they ate together and they praised God together. The intimacy just in the way they loved each other. But at the same time, they were able to do that and keep their focus outward. You think about that final statement, and the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. They were constantly inviting others into the circle. They were constantly, as a group, looking outward. Now, I just want to say that in order for there to be that kind of community, people have to fight the urge to turn the thing inward. And we all have this urge. The kind of community described in Acts 2 is so unnatural. It's just not the result of human nature. Human nature is to find my group, my people, and then cling to it, right? I mean, you go to any middle school in America, some of you shudder at the thought of that. It's just this collection of little cliques. People that have inside jokes, people with sort of this us and them thinking, people that sort of huddle together and look inward. And when I was in middle school, I want to tell you that's exactly what I did. I looked for my peeps, right? And I walked up to them in the hall and I said, "What's up, guys?" Then I got into a little circle in the hallway and I got shoulder to shoulder very insecurely with a bunch of other insecure kids. And we found community together, exclusive community. You know, we weren't real inviting because it was middle school. But now that I'm a grown man, now that I'm mature, now that I'm a follower of Jesus, now that I'm a pastor, for heaven's sake, I would never do that kind of thing, right? I mean, I'm way too secure, way too mature for that, right? Not so much. You know what I like to do? I like to do what I've always done. What's natural? I like to be with people that I know like me. I like to be with people that I have history with. I like inside jokes and stuff. And I find some level of security just being with my peeps. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Okay, that never fully goes away. But I want to say, well, we all battle that on some level. Okay, over the years, overall, this church, 11 years now, you guys have done an extraordinary job of being inclusive. And I just want to speak to you from the heart for a minute. As Jen said, today's the 11th day, 11th birthday of Brookview, and she shared from her, I didn't know she was going to do that. 11 years. And those of you that have been around for a while know that we've had some serious ups and downs together. You know, for most of our 11 years together, we've been like hanging on by a thread. You know, barely enough people to keep meeting, barely enough volunteers to do the work, barely enough money to pay the bills. We're always sort of on the edge of having to shut things down. And It's been beautiful. There's been extraordinary things that God has done, but it's been a battle. And about 4 years ago, Jen and I were on a walk around our neighborhood, and we do this often. It's kind of our thing. And this one day, we were doing our normal walk, and we were talking about life and talking about church, and we got hit over the head with a really hard reality. And we realized, you know what? We can't keep doing this like this. I mean, we said, you know, God knows we love these people. And, man, you know, we love you guys. But we said we can't keep pouring this much energy into this thing without seeing more progress. It's killing us financially. I mean, it's just killing us. It's killing us in terms of hours that we're spending on it. And we're not alone. We know we're not alone. We have so many people that are absolutely breaking their backs with us to make this work. Okay, but the reality is if we don't grow, we can't sustain this. And this dream that we've had, this little dream for this incredible Acts 2 kind of community down here in South Snohomish County will have to die. And so I called my boss and I laid out the reality. And if you're wondering, I don't mean I called God. I actually do have a boss because our church is a part of a denomination. And so I am accountable to other people, like really good, wise people. So I called my boss and I laid out the reality of where we were. And he put us in touch with someone to help us and sort of walk through maybe some strategies to get us going on the right road, someone to sort of coach us through it all. And so we started meeting with this woman who's sort of a church structure guru from the Portland area via Skype, and we did it pretty regularly. And so after listening to the situation, she said, okay, this is interesting. She said, I would like to see your flow chart. And I was like, what? Our flow chart? Why are we talking like menstrual cycles? You know, this is getting weird. My wife and this other lady, and we're talking. Okay, but Jen seemed to understand that whole thing right away. I didn't get it. She's talking about our organizational flow chart. Oh, okay. And she said, so I want to know all of the ministries that Brookview has. And then I want to know who leads the ministry. And then I want to know who does that leader report to. And then I want to see on paper sort of the leadership structure of Brookview. So she said, take a couple of weeks and then email me a diagram. And then we'll talk about it the next time that we meet. And so we put together, put that together. And we had, like 4 things that went to me. And about 50 things that went to Jen. And so we sheepishly showed our coach, and she said, I see a problem. And just so you know, like, we knew there was a problem, we really did. But it was just like there's so much day-to-day stuff that has to be tackled, we just never got down to structural things. She said, Jen, you have way too much responsibility. And also, every single ministry and every single leader in the church reports directly to the 2 of you. Nobody can really move. Nobody can be empowered. Nobody can be creative or innovative or deal with problems without having to have a conversation with one of the 2 of you. And my guess is, she's like, I don't know what's going on, but here's what I'm suspecting. People know how taxed you guys are, and so they just don't have those conversations. And things just don't get done. And so she said, I'm giving you an enormous task, but I believe this will turn the ship around for you. I want you to develop leaders of leaders of leaders. You need leaders that are leading leaders. Okay, so for 2 years, we poured ourselves into that. We kind of said there's certain things that are we're going to have to put on hold because we're in the leadership development and the leadership placement business here for a while. And so we asked some of you to step into some new roles, and you did. And my goodness, I mean, you guys have done an amazing job. And there's been so much good stuff that's been unleashed and is now happening all around here. And Jen and I, here's the cool part, we're not directly involved in tons of it. Okay? Because our leadership base is so much wider now. And now, maybe this is just coincidence, but over the last year and a half or so, we've grown quite a bit. And the growth rate seems to be like increasing rapidly. And I actually heard from 4 different people this week, 4 different like individuals or families. They said, hey, just wanted to let you know, Brookview's now my home church. And so, like, can you help me figure out how to be a part of the family? Can you help me connect with other people and serve and be a part of this? Now, some of you, are probably like, wow, like 4 families? Like, okay, whatever. Okay, now listen, maybe for like big churches, that would just be like a little blip on the radar. But for Brookview, 4 families saying that in one week is ridiculous. I'm like, this kind of thing's never happened in the history of our church. And it doesn't look like it today. I don't know where everyone is today. I was watching people come in this morning. I'm like, this sucks. I have a great, I want to talk about this, and it doesn't feel like it this morning. It's just the way it goes. But we are in a season, okay, where people are coming and they are sticking, and they're finding something deeply meaningful here. And I want to say to those of you, that have been around, those of you that have served and you have given for years, and you've prayed and you've prayed and you've prayed through some of the leanest of times, God, help us to reach people. Those of you that have cried with us and just worked with us, I want to say to you guys, thank you. And it was at this point in the sermon that I was going to say, now just look around. God is answering your prayers, but we had a mass exodus after last weekend. I don't know what Willow did. God really is answering your prayers. He really is, and He's honoring your giving. And He's making something really special out of your service and your sacrifice. And God is moving. And I hope that you're able to look around and see all the new faces and see the people that are getting plugged in and connected. And I hope that you see it, and I hope that you feel it, and I hope that it stirs you. And then I want to say something else. So much good has happened here over the years, because you guys have consistently been looking outward. There's been this real sense that we are holding hands and that we're loving each other truly, but not in an exclusive kind of way. And I just want to say to you guys, okay, we cannot lose that. Whatever else happens here, however many new people, we cannot lose that. We have to continue to be a church that's on a mission, and that cares deeply about those that are not yet a part of us. And I want to just quickly walk you and kind of talk through some arenas where we need to be serious about continuing to look outward. And the first thing that I just want to bring up is the way we interact with people, okay? Especially new people at church. What is, for those of you, what's the number one emotion that people feel when they visit a church for the first time? Fear. Yeah, I think I heard someone say terror. I don't know if I'd always go that far, but they are at least a little bit afraid. And so we used to do this thing in the old days where we talked about the Brookview dues, okay? And this is something we haven't talked about in a long time, but I just want to bring these up. We basically said there's 5 things we want you to think about when you're at church. And you can think about a lot more, but here's 5. One is acknowledge people, okay? We would say give people a word, a touch, and a smile. So say hello to them, touch their arm, shake their hand, give them a hug, whatever's appropriate for your level of relationship with them, and smile at them. And that's so basic, but what happens is we get busy, we get doing our own thing, we see where our friends are over there, we tunnel vision, we walk right by somebody that's going, hi, it's me. It's not good. So acknowledge people. Number 2, for the first 3 minutes after church, try to find somebody that you don't know to talk to. For the first 3 minutes after church, okay? I know that for some of you who are like hardcore introverts, that's really tough. You just want to get in your group of peeps and just be like, oh, here we are. First 3 minutes, find somebody you don't know, okay? Now here's why because what happens is when we all go to the people that we know really well, you have people that are a little bit newer to Brookview and there's nobody engaging them. And what happens is you go, well, I'll talk to them in a minute, but I'm going to go see my friend first. And then pretty soon you're in a 15-minute conversation and the people that are kind of newer, the people that are wondering if anybody's going to love them and be friendly to them are like, well, nobody's talking to me. And they just sort of slink out the back door, okay? So find somebody, talk to somebody. Number 3, fill out your communication card, okay? We want visitors to fill out their communication card. We want to be able to get a hold of them again in the future. But it's really awkward if you're sitting in a group of people and you're the only one filling out your communication card. You're like, oh, I guess this is what dweebs do. You don't want to fill out. Okay, so if everyone's filling their card out, it's natural for them to do the same thing. Number 4, be a center-forward sitter. In other words, try not to sit in the back of the church on the ends. Because if you're a visitor and you happen to come in a little bit late, where do you want to sit? In the back, right? And you really don't want to, when you're walking into church filled with terror, have to turn around to people you don't know and put your butt in their face and go, excuse me, across how many people to sit right at the one chair that's right in the middle of the aisle. Okay? So I know some of you have kids and you're worried about, or you have ministries you have to, this is not an absolute thing. You can sit on the ends. No one's judging you if you're on the end today. God help you. But it would be better if we could make our way toward the center and leave some seats for people that come in, okay? And I know it feels claustrophobic in there. It does. I get it. And then number 5 is be early. And you go, well, why would I be early? Nothing happens early. No, there's no one pouring any ministry into you if you come at 10:20. But what you can do is pour ministry into other people. Most visitors, when they come to church, they don't show up if we start at 10:30, they don't show up at 10:40 because they have images of their mind of having to turn around and put their butt in people's face. They get here early, right? And so they're standing around. And if the only people that are here are the people that have a job to do, who's going to engage them? Who's going to reach out to them? Who's going to be friendly to them? One of the greatest ministries you can have is to just show up here 10 minutes early and figure out who can I talk to? Who could I engage with? Okay? All right. Another way to be looking outward is in your life groups. And we're in a spot where I cannot tell you the number of people that have signed up for groups in the last 3 weeks. It's blowing my mind. And so if you're in a group, do it in such a way that you're inviting other people into what's going on. Many of you have history, you have inside jokes, you have all that stuff going on in your group, and that's great. That's fantastic. Keep doing that stuff. But do it in a way that is inviting to people that are new, that don't have that history with you. Okay, and recognize some of the groups are getting a little large because we have new people and we're not ready in this very moment to go start another group. Be patient with that. Be thankful for that. I mean, if you're somebody who sat around here for years praying, God, send us people, and now there's people here, you won't even be in your group going, this is too big. What are you doing, God? This sucks. Okay, embrace the growth. And then the last thing is just invite people to do things with you. Okay, if you're going to Ignite and you see somebody, invite them to go to Ignite with you. And maybe you say, hey, let's not just go to Ignite, let's meet up beforehand and I'll go over there with you. Or your life group. The best way to get people into life groups isn't me and Jen standing up here saying, you should get into a life group. The best way to get people in groups is those of you that are in groups saying, this is the most amazing thing, come do this with me. I know the story of one person in our church that knows a couple that had childcare issues. And this guy said, you know what, I want you in a group. And there's a great group that I know you can be a part of. And so I will commit to you to watch your children every Sunday night for you. And I wouldn't want to embarrass anybody, so I'll just give you the initials, Dustin Bowe. Decided to do that. So I used to lead Young Life and lead high schoolers on Sunday nights, and I'm available now, and so I'm gonna offer this service. That's beautiful, man. That deserves some applause, don't you think? Invite people to go. Whenever the Seahawks play early games at 10 o'clock, we get together, we record it, we watch it at the Bowie's house. Invite people to come with you to that. It's such an informal environment. I mean, I don't know. Church might be terrifying. I think going to a Seahawks game is not terrifying if somebody invites you and says, I'll go with you, sit by me. Invite people to go out to lunch. Invite people to go out to dinner, to hang out with you. And then the last thing is invite people to church. Next week, we're going to do something I'm so excited about. We're going to kick off a new series, and I'm going to do a message that's all about the love of God. And we're going to do it in the theater. Dale is allowing us to be in the theater just for next week, so we'll set up and tear down in there next week. And I want to be in there because we're using tons of movie clips for it. And I'm telling you, I am so excited about what could happen in somebody's life. And I know all of you know people who you would love to be walking with God. You would love to see them in community. And so I'm encouraging you this week, if ever there was a week, to invite them. Next week is going to be something else. I am just thrilled about it. And so inside of your bulletin, I actually ran into an old friend yesterday, and she started asking me about my life, and pretty soon I was telling her about stuff that's happening in the church, and she said, what time do you guys meet? Where do you meet? So I invited her to come, not today, thank God. I invited her to come next week, and I'm just hoping that she does. And so if you have people that you can reach out to this week, there's this little piece of paper in there, and you can write down one name, two names, family, just first names, please. We don't need to know last names. But I'm asking you to put their names on here and know that at Ignite tonight, we will pray for your people specifically by name. And so if you have people that you would like to see come into a relationship with Christ, come into Christian community, and you can invite them, I'm encouraging you to write their name down. We'll pray for you in inviting them. We'll pray for, not you specifically, but we'll pray for them being invited. We'll pray for their heart. We'll pray that God would move. And I know that I'm going to get the name of the lady that I invited, and just hope that she does. So you can drop those in the offering basket when it goes by along with your communication card. We'll take those to Ignite tonight, and we'll pray for them. And then the last thing is, I just want to encourage you as well to come to Ignite and to maybe bring somebody with you to that. And then I just want to close with this. I want to close by thinking about why this all matters so much. Because everywhere Jesus went, he saw hurting people, and it broke his heart. And Jesus just felt the ache of his Father, the weight of his Father's longing for people. And it's why he had to continue to be about his Father's business. And several years ago, I saw a Father's heart in a way that I will never forget. And if you've been around Brookview for, since the beginning, you've heard me tell this story before because it was so deeply impactful to me. I had a very good friend in high school named Tom. And a few years after high school, Tom got really sick. And he went into the hospital, and it's just kind of normal flu stuff. He had high fever and diarrhea, and unfortunately, he never came out. And the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. And they ran all kinds of tests, and they just couldn't figure out the problem. And so after about 3 weeks, Tom had deteriorated so fast and so much that the doctors announced he's maybe got a day or two left. And he was 23 years old. And he was one of my best friends. And so during his last day, I went down to the University of Washington Hospital Medical Center, and I just sat next to the bed on a stool, and I held my friend's hand. And he was completely unconscious. But I just sat there and held it anyway, and he was emaciated. He'd lost all this weight, and just muscle tone was gone, and he was just a shell of himself. And as I was sitting with him, his dad came in the door behind me. And his dad was this really big dude, deep voice. I mean, a man's man. But for the last several days, he could not bring himself to come into the room. Since the day that the doctors said he's not going to make it, it's just a matter of a day or two or three. His dad just couldn't take it. He couldn't bring himself to actually go in the room and look at his son. It's just too much. But this was the very end, and he knew it. He was running out of time. And he decided that he had to say some things. And so I just sat there holding my friend's hand. And I watched his dad in the corner of the room. And he's just shaking and weeping. And through his quivering voice, he just said, "Son, I love you. I don't know if you can hear me, but I love you, and I've always loved you, and I will always love you." He said, "Son, I hope you've seen how much I love you. I hope you know." And I will never forget that scene. Like, I just can't ever forget that. And since that day, I've thought, man, that's a father's heart. That's a father's heart. And in a small way, that is a picture of the heart of our God. And there are people all around us, all over, that are dying inside. And God's heart is breaking over them, and he is saying to them, "My child, I love you. I have always loved you. I will always love you. Do you see how much I love you? Do you know how much I love you?" And Jesus knew the Father's heart. He shared the Father's heart. He understood the ache. He shared it, and everywhere he looked, he saw a child that God loved. A child that didn't understand, a child that didn't know. And so he said to his disciples, "Guys, it can't just be about us. It has to be about them." There are hearts that are ready to respond. These people they would turn, they would come to him, they would do it. But somebody has to love them. Somebody has to invite them. Somebody has to reach out to them. Somebody has to tell them. So you pray for workers to go out into the fields. And now he's saying to you and to me, do you see the people out there? Do you see what I see? And he's asking us, will you join me in being about my Father's business? Will you go into the field and work? Will you listen? Will you notice? Will you encourage? Will you care? Will you share with people? Will you give? Will you serve? Will you come alongside? Will you invite? And I just want to encourage you. So many of you have people in your lives that I can just about guarantee all of us have people in our lives whose hearts are more available than we think. If they were to see a church of people actually loving each other and they were to hear about the love of God in a way that could resonate with them, I think we would be blown away at how many people would move in his direction. And so I just encourage you, think about the people in your world that you know, that you work with, in your family, in your neighborhood, that you do stuff with hobbies, sports, whatever. Who could you invite? Who could you invite? And I encourage you, next week, church is always good. But next week is going to be something special. And so